admit that I'm not. Recently, I was fortunate enough to get my hands on a fully loaded 2023 G87 M2, my very first brand new car. I flew over to Rhode Island to pick it up at BMW of Warwick and decided to drive it all the way back to Florida. In my initial video, I didn't give you guys my driving impressions because, well, I couldn't really drive past a certain RPM. But now that I successfully fulfilled the break-in period and got it serviced by my local BMW dealership, it was time to share my thoughts. And I'll be honest with you guys, I have mixed opinions. I guess we'll first talk about the gear shifter, right? This is a 6-speed manual. A lot of people have been talking about the 6-speed not feeling very well, too rubbery, a typical BMW feel. Kind of feels really good. It's very notchy, really easy to get into gear. You're not missing a gear with this gearbox, that's for sure. The really cool thing that comes activated from the factory is the automatic rev match. So if I downshift, take a look at the RPM right here, right? I don't have to do anything. It does it for me. So you don't have that bog down normally on traditional 6-speed cars, 5-speed cars, where you have to kind of either ease your way into that gear or where you have to blip the accelerator to try to match the RPM for a smooth one. So again, we're in 4th gear right now. We'll go 3rd gear and it'll rev match it. 2nd gear. That's something I've never had with any of my cars, and I think that's really cool. It just makes things a little bit easier. Sure, it's like a little bit of a handicap thing, right? But I mean, if you have such an awesome feature, why not use it? Plus, it makes the car sound really good when you can match those revs. It's almost like driving a DCT car. Put this into M2 mode, which is pretty much sport plus everything except traction. I have traction on MDM since I want to get familiar with the car before I take traction fully off. I will do a quick 3rd gear pull. Let's see. So I don't know if you guys noticed something while I was doing that pull. It has a twin turbo system, right? So you would think that the auto response, or at least the power, kicks in a lot faster than, let's say, a single turbo setup. It felt like when you floored the car, you kind of took off immediately. You had all that low end torque. With this car, it feels like it has to build boost before it gets anywhere. Once it gets there, it's pretty fast. Like, this car is very saucy in the 1st gear, 2nd gear, but then you get into 3rd gear, we'll go 3,000 RPM. Let it straight out real quick. Yeah, so once it gets up to boost, then you're good. Do a second now. Yeah, see, that's a lot more responsive. It still has that initial lag, which is weird, guys. I find that very odd with this car. I'm gonna try a 1st gear rolling start. Let's see. Put bar down. MDM kind of kicked in a little bit of traction, but it wasn't too bad. It allowed the tires to spin, but not excessively. Okay, now that was fun. Okay, that felt fun. Not gonna lie, that felt pretty damn good. And I think the best part about it, it was very controllable. Like, the car didn't go sideways at all. It went straight, and it only wanted to go straight. Like that, 100 miles an hour. That is very fast once you're in the power band, once you're in that sweet spot. In a nutshell, I think BMW has made the electric steering as close to hydraulic as possible. It's so fluid that you really don't notice any of the shortcomings that you get from electric. It's very responsive and smooth, and I'm just gonna say it feels amazing. So unlike the last previous chassis, they used to have Comfort, Sport, and Sport Plus. This one, they made it really simple. You have Comfort and you have Sport, and that's it. And honestly, the Comfort feels more than enough. Every once in a while I'll throw into Sport and it doesn't feel like extremely heavy like some of the earlier chassis models. It actually feels almost like an E90 type of heavy. Obviously not as authentic just because it's electric steering, but I gotta say it's pretty damn close, and honestly I'm pretty happy with it. Also the steering wheel in general, just how thick it is. Obviously it's an M car. One thing I probably would have preferred is perforated leather on the side rather than the solid, but I think it feels really good, and if you guys are looking to get a car like this, I think you guys would be happy with it, to be honest. Apart from the driver settings that allow you to control how sporty the car drives, there's a button on the center console called M mode, where you have 3 options to choose from: road, sport, and track. Road by default has all the safety features enabled, like collision warning and lane keep assist, Ford turns off most of it, if not all of it, and it changes the digital cluster's appearance to be more driver focused. Enabling track mode turns off the infotainment display, that way you're just pretty much focused on driving, and makes the digital cluster even sportier than sport mode. Also, the UI for the heads-up display switches to an RPM-based format where shift indicator lights are enabled to get a more precise shift when going for spirited drives. So there is one annoyance that I have. The problem is when you're on road, which is when you have access to the maps right here in the center of the cluster, and you have all the safety features like lane keep assist, steering intervention and stuff like that. In order to deactivate all that stuff, either you have to go into the menus or you hit the M mode, then you got to go into sport, and then there you go. Kind of wish there was just a single button for that sport mode that would allow you just to do just that. Press a button, you're into sport mode, and the weird thing is if you power cycle the car, all that stuff comes back on. So the easiest way to get rid of all the safety stuff is to go into sport. The other thing with sport is where for the maps there, that kind of seems pointless. Again, I'm nitpicking here because you could just go home right here and pick the maps from the home screen, and I can have access there and utilize this here. But the really cool map feature that you normally have on here disappears once you're in that sport mode configuration, which I kind of find annoying. I don't know. I just wish it was a lot more customizable. If I try to change the lane without a signal light, it's gonna yank me to the right hand side really aggressively. This time, look at that. I'm not doing anything. I'm not. And if you're not expecting that to happen, it gets pretty sketchy because it feels like you're gonna crash the cars. It might seem like I'm down talking to M2 a bit much, but it might just be me having a closed mind since I'm a huge fan of the older models where you can feel everything. The more I drove the car while filming, it started swaying in a positive direction for me. When you really feel how good this car is once you drive it aggressively. I mean, it is an M car, you won't really feel anything mind-blowing when you drive it normally. But when you open it up and put all the settings to Sport Plus, man, it's a very good time. Even with the streets being damp, the car was extremely controllable. Gotta give it up to the M division at BMW for balancing this car the right way. See up here, figure the engine to be efficient, sport, or sport plus. I like to keep it in sport for daily driving. Efficient, just doesn't have the throttle response, don't like it too much. Gear shift assist, that's where rev match is for you. So if you really want to heel toe on your own, or if you want to match your own revs on downshifts, then you can do that. For chassis, I leave it on comfort, but of course if you guys want to do some spirited driving, the one thing you'll probably want to do is switch it on to Sport Plus or Sport. It will, since it has electric dampening control, it can adjust all of that stuff. Steering, again, comfort and sport. And then brakes, which is something that I'm not very used to. You can adjust the feel of the brakes, which is very cool. I always rock it on comfort, which I guess just feels normal. Let's quickly talk about the weight of the M2, probably one of the biggest criticisms for this car. At 3,800 pounds, it's almost as heavy as the rear-wheel drive M4. Shorter wheelbase, but just as heavy. Well, how does it feel when driving the car? I mean, that's what really matters. Let's put it like this, it doesn't feel as light or nimble, let's say, as the previous generation F87 M2, but it doesn't feel as heavy as the new generation M3 and M4, despite what it says on paper. Sure, you can't feel as much as you would think from a quote-unquote smaller M car, but I think it has more to do with the car being newer, packed with a ton of technology that kind of suppresses the feel. As far as me feeling it, just driving it out, weight aside, statistics aside, it doesn't really feel that involved. You really don't feel the gear shifts. You don't really feel a lot of the steering, the jolt that you feel back. No, it's just so well put together and it's so much technology that it's extremely fast, but you don't really feel it that much. And maybe it's because they detuned it a little bit to not piss off the G80 M3 and M4 guys. Maybe it just needs that extra 20 horsepower it doesn't have. You can really unlock the power of the S58. Wide open throttle, and that's with obviously the stock downpipe. I mean, it made me smile, so it got to be somewhat fun, right? Here are my final thoughts on my initial driving impressions. The more I became familiar with the car and the more I drove it, the more I started to fall in love. Despite all the criticism this car gets, performance-wise, I think BMW did one hell of a job, and I almost feel bad that I will be modifying it, because I think how it stands straight from the factory is pretty damn good. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, it does help out the channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe as I got a ton of M2 content coming out very, very soon. As always, thanks for watching, till next time.